Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interview Mathew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, who has built a successful practice by growing a membership of loyal clients and by putting good out into the world. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and today I am thrilled to have on Mathew Kerbis, who is the subscription attorney. And he has a wonderful take on how to be more efficient in the work that you do and still be profitable and make money. Also, he is a speaker, an award-winning innovator, and like I said, I'm very excited to share his perspective with you, and I think that you'll derive a lot of value from what he has to share. So with all of that, Mathew, if you could share a little bit more about your background and what you're working on right now.
Yeah, well, I got to say, when one innovator calls you an innovator, it means a lot. So coming from you, Tom, I really appreciate that. Right now for me, it's like my practice is, as of the date of recording, 1 day away from my 2-year anniversary of launching the firm, and so it's like being able to look back at these 2 years and see where I've started and like where I am right now and where I'm potentially going is just like it's just a great time for me to be able to reflect on that and just in the middle of my firm's existence, Gen AI hit the scene, and I was already trying to leverage what AI tools were out there that were affordable for a brand new bootstrapped solo attorney, and like now it's just like, I mean, everything has taken off. My ability to serve clients without having to hire has increased, and the turnaround time of my work has been reduced, which is always a positive thing when you're not billing time. And so business is good. It's growing. And I definitely have friends and family members who are like, you should charge more. And I'm like, that's not the point. That's not the point. And look, I was just talking to an attorney today, a recovering attorney who's thinking about being licensed again after seeing what I do. And I told them, I said, like, literally just go to my website and copy stuff. I don't care. Like, it's such a massive market opportunity. I'm a true solo. I'll never, and they were in Illinois. And I was like, I'll never be able to serve the whole latent legal market in Illinois. So I welcome the competition because it also increases awareness that this model is a real model and that people can subscribe to legal services, actual legal services, not prepaid legal. And there's space for that too. I'm all for innovation in the way legal services are delivered. But I think the more people using the model, the easier it is for those of us using the model to close that sales gap and that education gap when trying to sign up clients.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate your attitude about that because I share it. I think that, the blue ocean frame of mind is really the way to go because when you think about the statistics, right, that like over 80% of people do not pursue legal help because they think it's, outside of their reach, that by doing the very things like you're doing, by making it more affordable, it actually expands the market. So there's much more business than we could ever actually take on.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing that you just said about expanding the market, because that 80% is existing market that lawyers just aren't serving. But and that's the access to justice part of it, but the full latent legal market is everybody at some point is going to have a legal thing that affects them because we live in a society governed by laws. And it's the operating system of our society. So I see the true latent legal market as literally every single person. If you're subscribed to a streaming platform, you should also be subscribed to an attorney. And frankly, a lot of other things too. I subscribe to a plumbing and electrical company, Tom. Like, why not? Right? So like the true latent legal market is even bigger than that 80%.
Wow. Did you say you subscribe to a plumbing and electrical company?
You
How
bet
does
I
that
do.
work?
I am a club's rewards member or something. I don't know exactly what they're calling their membership, but it is fascinating. And I already had my law firm before I subscribed to them. But their business model is very similar in terms of they pick a very low price that's easy for their user to pay every single month to get access to the subscription benefits. It's $9 a month. And what do I get with that? Well, the subscriber benefits that I get, which I may or may not use, and it's always easier when you're not a law firm and you don't have rules of professional conduct to comply with, because of course we do, and
Right.
I have to be supplying minimum value no matter what. Now they don't, but their subscriber benefits are one annual plumbing inspection in your home, which they would normally charge a couple $100 for anyway. So as long as I do that, I'm getting my money's worth. But then it's also 10% off of any services that they offer in-house. I mean, they do partner with some other companies, like when I got my EV charger installed in my home, that they go through a third party for that, so I didn't get the 10% discount on that, but I did get a coupon for that was only accessible for Home Rewards members or Home Club members or whatever it is, right? So I was still like kind of accessing a little bit of a discount benefit there because they couldn't. It was a third party, so they couldn't give the 10%. But then, as I learned in a difficult way, when I became a homeowner, things are always falling apart and happening, and sometimes that's plumbing and sometimes that's electric. So yeah, I don't want to have to deal with that myself. And I'm not an expert. Like, I'm pretty handy too, and I can do certain things, but it hits a level for me where it's better to hire the expert, and why not subscribe to them? And I could hire, and I've used other providers when they're not available, but they are still mostly available, and I go to them first. That's the power of a subscription model.
I get it. And I really think it's important for everyone listening to think about how everybody besides the lawyers approaches this stuff, because, you know, software as service, subscription plans have been around for a long time. This is nothing new for the rest of the world. And it, from what you just described, provides a lot of value. I know plumbers get pretty darn expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to have their input and save some money down the road makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah, and they have flat fee and hourly, and I always try to do the flat fee stuff,
Yeah.
obviously. But certain things don't qualify under flat fee for even my plumbing company. They'll still, if they need to rod a line sometimes, they don't know how clogged it is, they're going to turn on hourly billing, but at least I know I'm getting a 10% discount.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
I want to know, like, get a fuller picture of you, like pre-subscription attorney. Like, when like when you went to law school, like what did you have in mind? Was this like originally what, like, did you have this in mind the whole time and then like came to execute on it? If not, was it from a lesson learned from some experience that you had with another lawyer or just business in general that captured your attention? Like, how did this come about?
I think my first words were subscription attorney. No, it doesn't go back that far. I wish I could claim that I had any of this planned, but what I've always been really good at, and I really got into, like, I majored in philosophy in undergrad, and even in junior high and high school, I was very into Taoism and the way and going with the flow, right? And just sort of adapting as you go and taking in as much as you can, and figuring out the flow of the water of the stream and just going with it. And so that's really what I ultimately did, right? Like, I didn't plan on even calling myself the subscription attorney until several episodes into recording my podcast, Law Subscribed, in late 2021, because there were so many attorneys who were doing it before me. And I really wanted to sort of give them the opportunity to like claim that title. But it is very generic, and it kind of like I am an attorney who charges on subscription, and I have gotten some potential clients who are like, "Oh, you're an expert with subscription legal stuff." It's like, well, I
Oh,
could definitely help you with that, but I understand why they might think that. So anyway, I think that's why those attorneys who have been doing it much longer than me never claimed the title. But I was so into it, and I really saw it as the solution to so many of the problems that ail the profession and society served by lawyers, that I decided I was a title that I was going to claim. I mean, I think I got the domain to subscriptionattorney.com, I think maybe as early as like 2018, if you could believe it. So like it kind of goes back that far, when I was billing time for a few years at the time and just like not liking it at all. I couldn't stand it when there was one time I hung up with I'd been doing it for a couple of years, and I hung up with a call up talking to my father. I was like, okay, that was a .3. I got to go record that. I was like, what am I doing? What am I'm thinking about my time equals money for spending time with family. It just didn't make any sense to me. But but really, so many things came together. I was chair of the law student division for the ABA, and that's when I learned about the access to justice problem and how an attorney at one of the biggest, oldest law firms, who's president of the ABA at the time, couldn't afford his own legal fees. And that's where like the brokenness of the model first dawned on me. And all these law students that I was supposed to be serving and be their advocate, their voice in the ABA, they were just worried about paying back their student loans. And then that became a stark reality that I had to live with too. And so I just thought there had to be a better way to help people, help young lawyers have a profitable business model that wasn't as stressful as the billable hour, to help them pay back their student loans and make legal services more accessible. This access to justice gap I learned about in the ABA. And just through being involved with entrepreneurship things and looking at other businesses, other industries. And it was even, I think it was Kyle McEntee of Law School Transparency. Now he's with the NCBE, he's with LSAC now. But we were talking about like some legal business startup, and he was telling me he can't do it because it's fee splitting. And he was like, we'll just do the subscription model. And like, I think that was the first time really I ever thought about subscription in the legal industry at all. And from there, it just was in the back of my head. All these things came together, and I thought, this is worth pursuing.
Well, I'll tell you what, for people that are watching that may not be familiar with how it works, if you could break it down a little bit. So you have a subscription plan, but what kind of practice areas, how do you charge? What is a subscription and what do they get for it?
Yeah, and for what it's worth, this is just the way I've chosen to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. That's why I could have a podcast dedicated to the topic. Nobody's really doing it like I'm doing it. There's been some attorneys who are close to it. I think it works really well for me. So feel free to use this if anyone is inspired. But I choose a low monthly price that is reasonable and accessible for people to pay. And I even let any subscriber, even if they're a freelancer, which I have special subscriptions for them, or a small business, which I have special subscriptions for them too. I let anybody subscribe at $20 a month, and it's $50 a page. And like, that's what it really breaks down to, is the simplest way to explain the pricing. And what does that get access to? Well, everything is transparent on my website, subscriptionattorney.com. And you can see what that gets you access to. It gets you access to unlimited, but like a limited time frame of scheduled 15-minute calls, and access to most of, though limited, of flat fee services, including that $50 a page. And I don't charge $50 a page if I have an automation built, because that's sort of silly. I mean, it's going to take a few seconds. They fill out the information. It gets auto-populated into the document. And like, I don't need to charge $50 a page for that. And if I did, I'd be maybe at similar higher pricing that even flat fee attorneys offer. But my whole model is built around they subscribed. I now become their attorney for their life, their fractional general counsel for their life, if they're an individual, or for their business as long as possible. And whenever they have a legal need, they're going to come to me, right? So that's the goal. So I'm not going to charge $1,500 for a simple estate plan that another lawyer might charge. I'm going to charge $400 for that, because it really takes no time whatsoever, and it's truly for simple estate plans. If people have a complicated estate, I'm not the right attorney for them. So that's another part to answer your question. Mile wide, inches deep in terms of practice area. And if it goes more than inches deep in areas that I haven't practiced in for several years, then I find the right referral for that. And I'm not going to do something I'm not competent in. But for most people, if you're just getting married, and I'm doing a lot of prenups, you don't have a complicated estate. It's a very simple estate. Now, if you're getting remarried, that's a different story. I might not be the right estate planning attorney for you, but I could find you one, right? So that's the goal, is miles wide, inches deep. Things like real estate law that I've been doing for almost 10 years, I could do a lot in that. I could go many more inches deep, not quite maybe a mile, but maybe half a mile deep in real estate. And I'm comfortable doing that because I know my own limits. I'm subscribed to a lot of different CLE platforms. And if I can't figure it out in one CLE, I'm not going to be able to do it profitably. And so I move on. But then after a time, if somebody's paid me $50 a page, in particular for the business clients, be they solo or small solopreneur or small business, the way I'm able to get them to subscribe to higher levels is I stop counting pages. That's one of the benefits of going to those higher levels, is you get projects now. And this was something I learned. It took me almost a year into my business to learn to do it this way. So what is a project? A contract, a letter, a relatively simple research project, which has only gotten simpler thanks to AI tools. And when used correctly and using actual legal AI tools like LawDroid, right? Uh, so so a project, right? So if they are using me for 100 pages that month, if I were to charge them $50 a page, it's going to be $5,000. But even my small business level is only $2,500 a month. And so they are definitely getting the value of that subscription, because as attorneys, we have to think about the reasonableness of our fees. And so by breaking down all of my fees and unbundling them completely, I'm able to have a reasonable price for those higher level subscribers, which is really important for our profession. And even if they're not using the 10 projects that they get at that level, they're still getting incredible value because I'm no longer counting pages. I'm basically available. I open up my entire calendar to them. If they need it, I'll be their local registered agent. Like I rebundle back so many of these things that I've unbundled. I rebundled negotiations, which is a subscription add-on for my lower level subscribers. And so you bundle all that back in, so they're just getting way more value. That's called in the subscription economy plussing the subscription. And so it's actually, they're getting way more value paying me more. And a lot of lawyers who bill their time might think, well, I'm giving up so much money. Except you're not, because what you're getting is recurring value for providing recurring value. And you could have that subscriber for life. So another analogy I like to use is the apple. And feel free to interrupt me at any time, Tom. Another analogy I like to use is the apple. Right after this analogy, then, is a lot of lawyers think I get one bite at the apple. I want the biggest, juiciest bite I could get. I'm thinking I'm going to eat that apple over a lifetime, and I'm going to eat the whole apple.
I like the Apple analogy. But you already anticipated some of what I was going to ask you, because I know that attorneys listening to this, first off, they're looking for something different. They're looking for an alternative. I know that I was back in the day where, you're working long hours. It's frustrating. It's anxiety provoking, and you want to spend more time with your family. And this is an alternative, but immediately jumps to mind. One of the things you addressed is that some lawyers feel that they might be giving away the farm. Like, okay, this sounds great, but I'm not going to really get paid for the value of what I provide. And, so I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because I think, it's great to have that relationship, but just how that works from a profit incentive for the attorneys. So you did address that, and just to talk about that a little bit more, if you can.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more to unpack there. So some of it comes down to just like business things, right? Like it doesn't even have to do with the legal services I'm providing. So when you start looking at recurring revenue as a business model, and by the way, reoccurring is different from recurring. So that's like I upgrade my smartphone every year or so many years. That's reoccurring revenue these smartphone companies can rely on. Recurring revenue is now I could pay Apple a certain amount every month, and whenever a new phone comes out, I just get the new phone. So that's how they took reoccurring revenue and turned it into recurring revenue, which you could extrapolate and apply to your business, in any business that has reoccurring revenue or clients that come back to you. So you could think about pricing it that way. But the reason why Apple would even do something like that, and by the way, subscription is a huge part of their annual revenue, is because you can now count on that revenue. So as a business owner, you have income coming in and expenses going out. I don't know about you, Tom, but I think most lawyers are subscribed to a lot of subscriptions to power their practice. And so if you have predictable outgoing revenue, and by the way, monthly or biweekly, monthly salaries, rent, all these are subscriptions too, when you start thinking about it that way. So now you can predict how much do I need to. It's way easier to have a business model. I feel bad for all the CPAs that focus on law firms, because as soon as we start adopting the subscription model, there's going to be way less work for them to do. My CPAs have very little work for me to do, but they do help me with other tax saving strategies, which are fantastic. But I pay them a lot less than I would if I were in a different kind of law firm. So I'm able to easily track all that, right? And so by having that level of comfortability with my business, now I'm able to see, okay, here's what my outgoing is, here's what my incoming is. How can I, and this is really a paradigm shift for billable hour attorneys, spend less time on the work that's creating value that clients are paying me for, so that I could do more of that for more clients, and that will increase the incoming revenue. And then for outgoing revenue, how do I decrease those subscriptions or those costs? And then that increases the margin, right? And so I got started spending $5,000 a year in my first year to have a law firm. Because in this digital age, it's an incredibly possible thing to do. And my expenses from year 1 to year 2 only went up by $1,000. Those are sunk costs. Those are like, these are my monthly subscriptions that I'm paying. I sponsor local events, and I do spend some money on marketing, and I did have a failed a pay-per-click thing early on in my practice, which they give you some money, but you have to spend some money to get the money with Google AdSense or whatever. So big failure. But I learned that video is where everyone was searching because all my things got clicked on in YouTube. So like lawyers are still underutilizing that. So it was worth it because I learned that, and I'm still not great about doing video stuff, but I'm getting better with a new thing that I'm doing called the Law for Kids podcast. But then so that's what you're thinking about your business. So when you start thinking about it that way, you just think about increasing your margins by lowering your costs and decreasing the time you're spending on any one thing so that you could bring in more things. And the subscription model really supports that business model.
Yeah, I hear you. Predictability, low cost. By the way, those are crazy low costs. Like I can't, I would only hope for that. But that's really great. And you're right. Like once you have the predictable income and you can keep your costs low, then it's easy to calculate what your profit margin would be. I also think that, another worry that lawyers have, which you've clearly addressed, is that the unknown of taking on something at a fixed fee or a subscription could open you up to like this endless representation where now, okay, we're going to the Supreme Court now on the eighth appeal, and I'm still doing this for $5 or whatever. Like, that it could lead down that rabbit hole. But you explained that the plans are clearly described. There's limitations on each step and what they get and what they don't get. So I think that definitely, protects you from the downside, right?
And when you want clients to stay subscribed, I've waived a $50 fee here and there for like a one-page review because I just want them to stay subscribed and to keep coming to me and to bring me more valuable work, more pages of stuff if they're just an individual down the line, right? So like that they take a picture of something and send it to me and I happen to be available in that moment, which I'm not always. I do time blocking and I try to use do not disturb mode as much as I can. I might just, if I could get back to it quick and it just takes a minute, I'm just going to waive the $50 fee. Right, because I want them to be a happy subscriber, and so even if like my higher level subscribers go over their per project limit, if it's just once or like one project, it's not like double what they're paying for that month. I could be magnanimous and say not a big deal. If this happens more, you should really go up the subscription level, and like not charge them extra for it. But the way my model is set up and the way my engagement agreement is set up is I can now charge you the $50 per page over that project limit. Right. And so the a la carte pricing really actually allows the flexibility in the business model for if they go outside of their subscriber benefits, because I could always fall back on that $50 a page. But in the end of the day, I want happy clients that stay subscribed and feel like they're getting value and maximizing their value. And I've only had to raise my subscription level. I've only had to raise some clients up a subscription level a few times when they're really sort of like getting beyond the subscription benefits we've set every single, like for several months in a row. And those are hard conversations to have, but because I'm really providing them with a lot of value, they totally get it. And these are like the most I've ever increased somebody is 30%, but they were really using a lot of like my energy.
Yeah. Heavy users. Got to be careful.
Yeah. Well, it's good because they're going to be subscribed for life though. Like that's the thing. Like I could always count on that revenue from them. They're a great client.
Right. So for an attorney listening to this that is like totally interested, they want to do it, like a couple things. What's the biggest obstacle that you faced that they might face in implementing this kind of plan? And then number two, like what is the reaction you've gotten from other lawyers in the space about this?
I've only been trolled once so far, which I thought was a great win because that means that I'm getting enough attention now that I'm getting a troll. As a very, very micro influencer in the legal space on LinkedIn, getting your first troll is a big deal. They even made a fake LinkedIn account and everything, which was, I felt so special.
Oh, wow.
Most of the lawyers that I interact with are super, super interested. And I've been doing the podcast now long enough that I've even had some people on the podcast that started a subscription practice because they heard Law Subscribed. And so, like, it's really, I think, having a positive influence on lawyers. And I love when if lawyers are challenging me on, well, I can't work because of this or can't work because of that, they're already open-minded enough that they, like, went to my CLE. Like, they're still interested in it. So the lawyers who do find me, or if I find them, even if they don't stop billing time, like, they tend to, it tends to be very good interactions. And that's because nobody actually likes billing time.
Tell me
Like,
about it.
right. And so they just might not believe you that it could work, and they might, like, not believe me unless they saw my numbers. But if they saw what my accountants see, but like, they still want to believe in it. Like most lawyers, like, I don't think they want to be billing their time. Um, so so then, to answer, like some of the hurdles, like, that I had, it's just like the most difficult hurdle still is, I thought people would jump at the idea, but there's a big education gap, right? Because for so long, this latent legal market has gone unserved by lawyers. And, like, the alternatives have not been very good. And some of them have been better than nothing, right? Like, if you can't afford $20 a month and $50 a page, like, I don't even know if you could afford LegalZoom, like, so it's complicated. Like, I've tried to be competitive in that space, but I can't charge any less, right? But if we're able to fill that gap, then, like, the pro bono stuff will actually be able to help those folks, I think. But the education gap is real. I've done a lot of in-person pitching at, like, chambers of commerce meetings, networking events, like, in person, to get live reactions from, like, what works and what doesn't. And I've been able to really refine my pitch. And I think that has helped. And I mean, I'll say it right here. I don't know if I could trademark this or not. It's not on my website, but it is, get back to what you enjoy in your life or your business. Right? Offload your legal things to me, and I'm going to take care of that for you. You don't ever have to worry about that again. And it's a transparent price for legal advice, which is also, that is on my website. But that, like, that is, I try to work in some version of that, and that has seemed to resonate more than, like, some of the other pitches. But, like, just explaining to them, like, what it is and why you should pay a lawyer every month is a tough thing is a tough hill to get over sometimes.
Okay. So clearly communicating the value, the marketing and education part of it, but that's pretty much every occupation, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah. So, okay. It sounds really attractive to me. One thing that I thought was really awesome that I saw on LinkedIn, and you just mentioned it, the Law for Kids campaign. Tell me a little bit more about that and how that kind of fits into everything.
Oh, man. So I really want to thank the Lunch Hour Legal Marketing guys, Conrad Sam and Guy Sakalakis, because I've been listening to that podcast, I don't know, however long it's been out there. So, like, approaching 10 years, I think, like 8 years or something like that. So so one of the things they'll talk about a lot is brand affinity. And I never really understood what that meant, but I listen to them, they talk about it. So that's in the back of my head. Like, I kind of came to the Law for Kids podcast, kind of like how I came to the subscription model for legal services. I wasn't actively trying to get there, right? I have a 3-year-old, and she's started to ask a lot of questions about things. And, like, on occasion, it's like a legal question. And I think that's really interesting, right? And I was always a camp counselor. I'm a huge. I was a benefactor of mentorship when I was coming up as a student and in the profession, and so I really give back. I volunteer a lot of my time mentoring, and so I'm doing a lot of teaching. I love when I get a chance to guest lecture on the subscription model at law schools, and I've gone back to talk to my high school since consistently at least once every year since. I want to say 2013. So I've been doing it for, like, over 10 years. And so I always try to give back, and I always try to educate and teach. And even Barry Currier, the former managing director of the ABA section of legal education, said that he believes that there's a teacher in every lawyer. And so I have a big teacher in me. I also have teachers in the family. And so, a camp counselor, like, I love kids. I have the rare ability to make any baby laugh. And I think it's because I look like a baby with the bald head, but I'm really good with kids, and I just thought, like, I'm talking to my kid. I know this stuff about law. I also remember my first year of law school. Maybe you feel the same way. This resonates with a lot of lawyers. Is when you when you learn all that stuff your first year of law school, you're like, I should have known this. Like this feels like basic stuff that like every citizen of the US should know. Like what is a tort? What is negligence? Like what is assuming a duty? And if you ever end up buying a house, you're gonna see like easement on things. Like what's an easement? Like these are
Right.
things that like would be really useful for us to know just interacting in our everyday lives. And so the Law for Kids thing is a way for me to genuinely do something I'd probably love to do and volunteer to do anyway, but also build this brand affinity with like I could spend money on marketing and I could do things that might more directly bring me business and it might be more profitable for me to do that. But I kind of like educating kids, right? And so I could make up an excuse. Really, it's like I said this to somebody that I like. It's an excuse for me to record in my recording studio with my daughter and call it work. Because I am trying to build brand affinity, and I think it's important to be upfront about that. But I'm really just trying to put good out into the world and associate it with Mathew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, like did good, and it's a thing that like, and I researched it, Tom. There's no Khan Academy for law, right? There's no like anything about teaching kids about overall principles about the law. Sure, there's like know your rights or child rights advocates or constitutional things, like all that stuff. There are podcasts, there are seminars, there's YouTube videos about like child rights, and those are usually coming from lawyers who represent children or are guardian ad litem, right? So they're trying to build brand affinity more directly, right, with putting out that free content. So the thought is, I can't serve everybody anyway. Like in the US, I'm a true solo. And this, I hope it trends nationally because it's really just US jurisdiction law that I know. And like it should be shared by educators. It should be shared by camp counselors. Like it could be shared amongst parents to like learn these topics. And I have my daughter recording some voiceover for it, and it's freaking adorable. So they should just listen to it for that. I listen to podcasts with my kid, and she loves hearing other kids talk on podcasts. There's an app called like Kids Pod or something like that, where it's like a lot of kids focused podcasts. And also, this was another thing. I know, sorry, this is a long answer to your question, but I also read like a year or two ago, I read about how 50% of kids in the U.S. under a certain age listen to podcasts. So I'm also thinking as a small business owner, well, a percentage of those 50% may be transacting in Illinois in the future when they grow up. I plan to be in business for a very long time, right? And I'm happy I have a profitable business. Sure, could I be making more money working at a big firm? Well, first of all, I don't have the pedigree to work at a big firm, but yes, if I did, I would be. But I have a profitable enough business that's growing. This is how I want to do my marketing. I want to actually put something good out into the world and plant those seeds for when these kids listened to me. Now they'll have a chance to maybe hire me when they're older.
I think that's wonderful. And not just, you don't have to wait for them. It might also be their parents who have a need and they see
Maybe.
but the one thing that I think I totally agree with your point of view and the way you approach things, because I think truly that when you put good out in the world, the money, if you need that, will follow, right? Like it's not about that. When you approach things authentically and you put yourself out there and you provide good to the world, I think the value that you create in the world comes back to you.
Yeah.
Um, I know that we talked about this before, but I was a philosophy major as well, and yeah, I think that you might call it karma or something else, but it's just a real thing in the world, and
Yeah.
it's better to approach it that way than the way sometimes we view it, which is very short term. Oh, if I go to a conference and I'm a vendor, like, am I going to get a lead? They're going to sign up immediately. Or if I talk to this client, are they going to immediately pay me? Well, sometimes life doesn't work that way. It's about creating relationships, right?
100%.
When you provide the services, though, you had mentioned that you use automation and AI. And that's one way to be able to provide that kind of value and scale it when there's only one of you. So if you can get into, like, can you give us a more concrete example of maybe just like one example of how you do that?
So when I was just getting started, which was before Gen AI was out, I subscribed to Law, which is through the Illinois Institute of Continuing Legal Education. And they use something pretty scrappy, like it's like, hot docs or like some kind of like very basic automation, but it was only $28 a month at the time. I think it's $29 a month now. And I'm still subscribed because you never know, like there might be a document automation in there that I haven't used yet. And so that's where I got started with document automation, was through using that platform, which for a true solo, like bootstrap solo, like $28 a month was a godsend. I mean, it was great. And then I was also using early on Speed Legal. I'm not using Speed Legal anymore, only because I've come to use some of these other Gen AI tools out there. But in the beginning, they were still it was still saving me some time. Like I said, I haven't used it in over a year. I imagine they're incorporating Gen AI now. But what was nice about them is they let you have like 1 or 2 reviews for free, and then it was only like $50 or like something per doc review. And if I'm charging $50 a page, like the pricing actually really made sense for my model. For me to be able to throw something through there, because it's only going to cost me 1 page of the thing that I'm analyzing. And so it would quickly identify like red, yellow, and green flags. And it just did it, but it wasn't using Gen AI, right? It was using like other machine learning based training and other things, right? So that's when I got started. Now I'm able to leverage some tools. Like I upgraded. I mean, I still like Formula, but like Gavel, lets you bring your own documents and automate them, and they used to be Document and all that, and they're a sponsor of the podcast. Another sponsor of the podcast, 650, which I learned and started using them before they became a sponsor, so I could make sure like it actually would be a good fit. And they are just, I mean, if Sweet Dash, or not Sweet Dash, if Formula, was like good for like just getting started as a solo, since I was doing a lot more small business fractional counsel representation, like they have tons of business and employment resources, that they are a document database and automation platform that's like just focused on that stuff for unlike Formula. Now both of these are more expensive, right, than the previous things that I was using, but they really let me leverage that automation. I haven't even gotten to the new AI tools yet, right? But then a lot of the Gen AI stuff came out, and I'm definitely using Gemini, ChatGPT, and Perplexity, and Claude. I'm using Claude a lot, in not always necessarily for law stuff, but for podcasting, because it has a large context window. And then tools that I've been using for a while started to integrate Gen AI. So Calendly, and Adobe and Canva come to mind. So I'm using AI in those tools. And again, it just kind of helps you get there sooner. So now right in Adobe, I could be looking at a PDF and it will do an AI summary for me. And like now it's just incorporated into it, right? And so it's still not going to be a legal analysis, right, where I might put it into like a Paxton or a GCAI. And I should say I am very LawDroid curious, Tom. So you might see a Kerbis at subscriptionattorney.com subscriber come through in the near future, and I look forward to playing around with LawDroid. But like I'm able to, in these tools that do some kind of AI legal assistant specifically for legal. I don't do it in the free or the non-legal specific AI tools. I'll ask questions, and GCAI is in early beta right now, but what I like about them is they let you like save any prompts that you find yourself using a lot. So you could do like a command that like brings up your prompts that you like to use. So like, I'm representing client X in this agreement, please identify any risks, even low-level risks, for client X. And then because it's trained on so many things, it's able to identify those risks. And when you're representing businesses that need quick turnaround, just like an in-house attorney does, sometimes they just need a quick result. And I could look at the analysis, I could click on the tag or the citation, go to the document, look at that part, see, yes, I see how that could be problematic, and I could just type in, say, suggest some other language, and I know Hyperdraft just kind of does this, it like brings up some other clauses for you, right? And I remember demoing Hyperdraft. I'm not actually using their tool, but I do have like a little bit of like, I like to say things a certain way, and I do have some certain clauses that are boilerplate that I prefer for my clients, so I sort of just have a Google Doc of that when I identify those clauses. But I know there's ways to streamline that. So that's, largely how I'm incorporating AI to do it. And all it's doing is it's getting me to the end result faster. I'm sure I could be leveraging these tools even more creatively. But because I'm doing so much, this is still saving me a lot of time using them the way that I'm using them.
Yeah, I think right now there's kind of an embarrassment of riches, like with Gen AI and automation. Like there's just so many options out there, and it's not only like legal specific solutions or legal tech solutions, but there's off the shelf stuff like you mentioned, the foundational models, Claude, Cohere. They just released like new models that are just even more amazing, and Gemini now has like a million token window. Like it's just insane what we have available to us. Okay, so like the economics make sense. The economics are sound of being a subscription attorney.
Hmm.
Um, the marketing makes a lot of sense. You want to get out there with communities that you feel good about interacting with, getting the word out. And then underline all of it, underpinning it is the ability to get to the result faster, like you mentioned, using automation and AI. So sounds like a pretty sound business model to me. And I think to a lot of other people. For example, you're the winner of the James Keene Award this year, right?
Yes.
So share with us a little bit about what that is and how you got it and what it's meant for you.
So the award was founded, I think, almost 20 years ago. So I think technically it's you win an award for excellence in e-lawyering, which is a little bit of a dated term these days. So like what I like to say, it's like being an innovative virtual law firm. And primarily, there's a focus on serving the broad middle class, which is definitely like a mission of like me getting started. And for somebody who's only been doing this for 2 years, but I've been a very vocal advocate and I teach a lot for free. And I do very little paid consulting on it because I just don't have a lot of time to do that kind of a thing. But lawyers told me they wanted to pay me money for me to help them do it. So like I was like, I will try to find the time for some of you. And it's not really a focus of mine. I have no plans to ever become a full-time attorney coach or consultant or whatever. I don't get me wrong, I love lawyers. We're terrible clients. Sorry for LawDroid, Tom. But I imagine LawDroid clients, our customers, are better. So, so I mean, just I would tell you, I was almost to tears when they were announced, when they were like, we're reading off the history of the award and what it means, because I mean, talk about validation, you know, probably other than like getting married and having a kid, like the most important moment of my life, right? So incredibly rewarding. And it has already helped bring in a little bit of business, if you can believe it. I don't even have a formal press release out, but people were posting about it on LinkedIn. And so I got like some clients out of it because, it's nice to hire an award-winning attorney and they only cost you $20 a month and $50 a page.
That's fantastic. And yeah, tons of validation. What you're doing, it works. It makes it possible for other lawyers to lead a better life. And it also improves the lives of the people that are getting the benefit of your services.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good on you.
Thank you.
So one thing I noticed with what you're talking about is it's actually there's a similar thread that runs through you, me, a lot of legal innovators that I've been interviewing, which is this ability to kind of jump into stuff. And to me, that reflects a certain amount of bravery because it's the unknown, there's risk involved, and the courage of jumping into it to take that risk, knowing that you'll figure it out as you go and that it doesn't have to be all figured out and perfect to begin with. Where does that come from for you? Like, how did you learn to do that? Is this just something innate?
It's a really good question, and I'm trying to ask the same question on my podcast, Law Subscribed, because like, how do these other attorneys using the subscription model, like, what's special about them, and what's this through line, right? And in particular, what I've discovered is most of the lawyers innovating on the billable hour model and getting rid of it for subscription and or flat fees are women attorneys and attorneys of color and women attorneys of color. And I think part of this is because the status quo in the legal profession sort of puts them down, and the billable hour doesn't comport with their innovative and efficient ways. But then, like, what about me? Like, I'm just some white dude, Like, I am a first generation attorney, so I think some of it is lack of functional fixedness, right? So, like, my parents were not attorneys; they're both in sales, And even before that, I have blue collar roots. My grandfather was a truck driver, and then a police officer and a detective. And my other grandfather was like a door to door clothes salesman. And so I do come from a long line of salespeople, and I think that does help. But being honest, as a small business owner, but I don't know. So like humble roots, maybe having to pay back student loans, and not just having being born with a silver spoon in your mouth. We lived a comfortable life, but we didn't have everything, and I had to take out student loans to go to law school, and so um, when you have that ticking clock too, you got to get the drive. You get the drive to do something and figure out a way to get out of that hole a little bit, and it could be crushing. I was always entrepreneurial, even from a very young age. I was always inventing things and trying to solve problems. And I even started a nonprofit with 4 of my closest friends in high school. And just like any high school company that gets started, it, was a massive failure, but we tried. We tried to do some good in the community, and we did some good, but it's hard to continue that into college when you're all going to different places. So I've started companies before and I failed. And I will say, like, my partner, my wife, she has a really good job, really good benefits. Until very recently, she was I think the last millennial who was working at the same job out of college for like 13 years. I think now there's no more millennials that still have the first job that they started with out of college, that they started as an intern there. And so, while I was taking on a lot of risks, and we did have to cut a lot of personal expenses too. Um, because she was earning a good income, I have a little bit of a safety net there as I was getting my business started. And it really took like 8 months for things to get to the point of we don't, we're not burning any of our savings. And then after that, we've since more than recovered, what we had to spend as I started this business. But you have to have a good partner too, and I do. So that's a huge help. But back to the nature nurture of it all, it's both. It's both, Tom. It's always both. It's human nature, I think, speaking of nature versus nurture, I think it's human nature and a little bit of nurture that we engage in the bifurcation fallacy, the black or white, it's all or nothing. But nothing is ever in the extremes, right? Everything is in between. And I think of it less linear and more quadratically. Like I think of it in terms of a quadrant, right?
Yeah.
Even a z-axis sometimes. If I could get in the right mindset, I even think about the z-axis. So like nothing is ever just like in one extreme. And so I think it's a combination of nature and nurture that people could get here. So if you have less of the nature, I think you could get it through nurture. And if you have all of the nature, if it's not nurtured, then you're not going to be an entrepreneur.
All right. So the logical question that I have, and I think a lot of people that are listening to you might have, is you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing, like, you have the podcast, you're a speaker, you're everywhere, Matthew. I see that, you're at the conference. And I think you're podcasting from the conference. I mean, you got so much up in the air, including the subscription business and the Law for Kids podcast and your own subscribe podcast. So how do you keep that all in the air? Do you believe in the whole work-life balance thing, or what is your take on it?
Yeah, I think I have work-life balance, and it's not perfect, right? It's not always in equilibrium. You know what I'm saying? I've heard work-life integration, whatever you want to call it. I do like to say, and I've said this since high school, if you could believe it, I'm a jack of all trades, master of some. And so, like, I am like a generalist, right? Like, I've never been one to focus or think I am to be put into like one box, right? I think that's a fallacy for anybody to be put in a box. But I have like very staunchly since early teenage years fought that. And I like doing a lot of things, and it's just part of my nature. But the simple answer to your question is 2 words or one hyphenated word or one word, depending on like how you see people spell it, and that is time blocking. Time blocking is key. Put everything in your calendar. There's a reason Calendly is my most leveraged piece of software. I live and die by my calendar. Everything goes in the calendar, right? Personal time, family time, networking time, everything, and like. I'm still trying to find a really good solution for that. I actually had some great conversations with Clio's product people at Tech Show about that, because I was like, even though none of these practice management softwares are built for subscription, if they had the best time blocking software, I would subscribe, because there's not great time blocking software out there. It's a very manual process for me, and I'm trying to automate it. And my most recent discovery, though I've not really leaned into it yet, is a little app called Amy, AMIE. And it's got slightly more advanced features than a calendar, though I'm still trying to learn it, because with all these spinning plates that I have, it's hard to learn a new piece of software sometimes. I usually have to drop something else, and I'm very saturated right now. But it's always being able to do things that you care about and that you're passionate about too, because then it doesn't really feel like work, right? I'm a big believer in monetizing everything that you do, that you like to do. And so that's why I have the firm is Subscription Attorney LLC. I do have a consulting company that's Kerbis Verse LLC, which is of course a play on my last name and metaverse, multiverse, universe, whatever verse, right? And that's what the podcast is under, and that's what some of these other things that I do are under. And I don't really promote it at all, but kerbisverse.com has like all the things that I do that I monetize that are not just me practicing law. I'd say it's about 80-20. 80% of my time is as a practicing attorney, which, by the way, includes being a owner of a law firm. So there's all the non-legal stuff. So the business stuff, I still put that into the 80%. Time I spend marketing, networking, business development, all that stuff, building automations, figuring out new software. That's part of that 80%. Maybe half of that is actual legal work, although I'm trying to reduce that, right? Like actual traditional legal work. I want to automate things. And then the other 20% is all the other stuff. And if I'm making money doing all the things, then I could rationalize it, and my partner supports me.
Yeah, it makes sense. Definitely need a buy-in from our partners for sure.
Yes.
Um, one of the things that you mentioned, and I first off, I completely agree with you about that approach, because I think if you love what you do, then it doesn't really feel like work. But the thing is it's kind of like, it's easy to say that, but then to get to that place where you can say that means that likely you have your own direction. You're not working for someone else who's dictating how you do things. So like there's a certain context where that makes sense.
Right. And I'm not perfect, Tom. I don't always have everything perfectly balanced, and I've dropped some plates. It happens. You just
Yeah.
have to be able to, accept that everyone's flawed, including yourself, and not expect perfection from yourself. And when amazingly, when you stop expecting perfection from yourself, you stop expecting it of other people, and your relationships will improve.
Wholeheartedly agree with that.
I
And
hope
I think
everyone stuck around to the end of the episode. That might be the wisest thing I've said all episode. And I didn't plan that. That was spur of the moment.
well, I'm going to capture that and put that on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But yeah, totally. We need to be easier on ourselves, especially as attorneys. I think we're kind of like printed out to be perfectionists, and need to do a better job of being good to ourselves. Also, the fact of you mentioning like the generalist versus specialist thing. I know that also as attorneys, we're really trained to, like the ideal is to be a specialist and go like 10 miles deep in something. But I'm of the same cloth as you, that, I'm a generalist. I've worked in many different practice areas, many different industries actually too. And I think that gives you a certain perspective where you can understand people better, relate better, communicate hopefully better.
Right.
And that's all to your advantage. So awesome.
Yeah, I think it was Miyamoto Musashi, and I can't remember if I'm butchering that. It might be the
The
reverse, because
physicist.
in
Yeah.
Japanese, where he said, roughly translated from Japanese, if you master the way of one thing, you can master the way of all things, because it is all connected. And it does help you communicate better with other people the more you know about stuff. And really, I think, and I learned this from, I can't remember if it was a former partner that I worked for or a professor, but it was somebody like in that kind of a role for me, who said, the more you learn about anything, the better lawyer you're going to be, because you don't know what kind of client you're going to get that could be in whatever industry or whatever thing. And so, like, the more you know about more stuff, it just makes you you apply your specialty to it, because he was of that specialist mindset, and you will be a better lawyer for it. And I think he told me that in the context of, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and he was like, I'm glad you're listening to podcasts, and here's why. So I think it was a partner. Now that I say that, I think it was a partner who said that to me.
Okay. Well, now that we're in this philosophical kind of point of view, let me ask you the question, what makes it all worthwhile for you? Like at the end of the day, after all this stuff, keeping all the dishes, spinning in the air, what makes it worthwhile?
I don't get too existential, Tom. Like the thing itself, like a little bit though, right? It's like living in the present moment. If you really do want to get existential, life really doesn't have any meaning, and so you get to assign that meaning. And I've definitely been through the mindset of rethinking everything that just happened and ruminating. I've been in the mindset of only thinking about what's to come and in the future, and like trying to get there, and that can be motivating, but it can also be disappointing because you never get there, right? And
Mm.
so some of it is just living in the moment. And I think it goes back to seriously just how I was raised. Like, I think it's how my parents raised me, and the values instilled in me by the communities that we were a part of. And just like that is like the foundation of who I am. And I just try to live in the moment and do the best that I can in that moment. If you, I'm quoting, I think something super nerdy here. I can't really remember where it's from, but it's like, actually, it's from Futurama. If you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all. And I do try to live that way and just try to do what's right. And you're never going to know exactly what's right, but if you just do your best, that's the only thing you could do. And since becoming a father, just trying to be a good example for my kid too.
Words to live by, Matthew. And I think you've given us a lot to think about. I think that you are a great example, and hopefully an example for, our audience to learn more about the way that you're approaching life, the way that you're approaching business. And if they want to learn more about that, how can they keep in touch with you?
Forever the excellent podcast host, Tom. I've already dropped some websites, but I'll drop them again. The firm is subscriptionattorney.com. And if you do /engagement, that's my engagement agreement. So you could see what a subscription law firm engagement agreement looks like, at least for Illinois. And the podcast is lawsubscribed.com. And it's, I think since I have Substack powering it, you have to do www. Otherwise, your browser might tell you that it's an unsecured thing. So if you want the HTTPS, you got to do the www. Hey, it is what it is. But there's 60 plus episodes. And if you subscribe to that, you'll hear Tom in the future on an episode as well, where we talk all about LawDroid and the cool things LawDroid is doing. The speaker portfolio. So if you want to hear other times that I've been interviewed, that's MathewKerbis.com. And if you search the MathewKerbis.com or the subscription attorney on LinkedIn, that's the best place to connect with me. DMs are always open, and I always welcome not just follows, but connections on there.
Well, thank you so much, Matthew. It's a pleasure having you on.
Thanks again for having me.
And thank you all for watching the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. So happy to bring you guests just like Matthew, who are going to provide you with value, show you a different way to approach life as well as your work. And we'll see you next time. Stay tuned.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.